And now, American Samoa by Frank Taylor Chambers. The Samoan Islands lie between the 169th and 173rd meridians of west longitude and between the 13th and 15th parallels of south latitude. Their group consists of a number of small islands, but only Savaii, Upolu, Tutuila, and Manua are of any importance. The first of these is the largest, having an area of about 700 square miles, but its surface is so rugged that it is said certain portions have never been penetrated. It is Upolu, with an area of about 550 square miles, which furnishes the bulk of the exports, principally copra or dried coconut. Tutuila, with an area of about 55 square miles, is similar in formation to Upolu and furnishes its fair proportion of the principal export. In Upolu, however, a German company has for years had large areas under cultivation, and this, with its much greater size, has given it the advantage of trade. From 1879 to 1900, the islands were practically under the jurisdiction of Germany, Great Britain, and the United States, though the consuls of the three powers who directed the government had little real authority beyond the vicinity of Apia, the principal town which lies on the north shore of Upolu. It is not the purpose of the writer to enter into the many differences between the representatives of the tripartite government and the constantly occurring petty wars between the native factions. Suffice it to say that these matters resulted in 1899 in the appointment of a High Commission of the powers concerned, which finally decided upon a division of the territory. Great Britain, in return for concessions in the Tonga group, relinquished her share to Germany, which therefore was awarded by far the greater portion, i.e., all those islands lying west of the 171st degree of west longitude, the United States taking all lying east of the same meridian. This country had, since 1878, possessed treaty rights to the principal harbor, that of Pago Pago, which nearly severs the island of Tutuila. In fact, for some years it had had a coal pile there, and at the time of the appointment of this High Commission had begun to establish coal sheds and wharf of substantial character. On the 17th day of April, 1900, the United States flag was formally raised on the island of Tutuila, and government assumed over that part of the group now recognized as American Samoa. Coming as it did so soon after our occupation of the Philippines, and at a time when our military and naval activities were large, this incident received comparatively little notice here. In Tutuila, however, it was naturally a great event. Pago Pago Bay became a very active center. The shores and shallow waters became dotted as never before with the small boats of the people of more distant settlements, and the capacity of the houses of the surrounding villages was strained to the utmost. The population was highly pleased with the change of government. Speeches were made by prominent natives at the flag-raising ceremonies, and a paper signed by all the principal chiefs was handed to the naval governor, expressing satisfaction thereat and welcoming the new order of affairs. There was a general celebration afterwards, consisting of feasting and games of all sorts known to the natives, and of many more introduced by the officers of the naval station ship having that part of the entertainment in charge. The islands called Tau, Ofu, and Olosega, lying some 70 miles east of Tutuila, have a combined area somewhat less than the latter and are generally designated under the group name of Manua. They are of the same general formation as the larger islands and produce a sufficient quantity of copra to attract periodical visits of the small trading schooners. As these islands lie so far from the larger and more central ones, the inhabitants have held themselves somewhat aloof from the others, have had their own government, and at times have refused to recognize any central authority. These are said to have been the first of the group to be settled, and their high chiefs have even claimed precedence over those of other islands. When informed that the United States had assumed government over them, they were at first inclined to demur, but upon learning that there was no intention to disturb then-present conditions and that their high chief would retain his position, they agreed to the arrangement. As they have not the advantage of a good harbor, there is no reason why they should be disturbed in present habits or form of government, and as, like all other Samoans, they are professed Christians, having their own teachers and church organizations. There is no opening even for the foreign missionary. Excepting Rose Island, a coral atoll, picturesque enough with its fringe of coconut palms around the inner lagoon, but entirely useless from a commercial or naval standpoint, the islands are all of volcanic formation, largely mountainous and too small in extent to become of much commercial importance from their own yield. First impressions of scenic Samoa are not soon to be forgotten. The islands are brilliant green from water's edge to highest mountain top with the tropical vegetation. Steep as the hillsides are, there is scarce a bare spot to be seen, though an occasional vertical wall of rock defies all but creeping vines to maintain a footing. The varied shades of blue and green of the water, from that of the deep sea to the lighter coloring over the reefs, the cresting of the surf, lend a most attractive foreground, while a species of small seabird, pure white, ever to be seen soaring in pairs against the emerald background of the hills, rarely fails to throw the novice in tropical scenery into an ecstasy of delight. Upon closer acquaintance, the traveler will learn that underlying the network of trees there is a mass of vines and undergrowth which renders progress across the islands, except by a few beaten paths, difficult, and without a free use of the knife, sometimes impossible. The mountainous conditions, of course, add largely to the trouble. Despite the small extent of our main island of Tutuila, 5 miles by 17, some of its mountains are of considerable height. The greatest, Matafao, being over 2,300 feet. The native products are coconuts, bananas, mangoes, taro, yams, and breadfruit. Of these, coconuts in the form of copra are practically the only export. Cacao grows well, but has not so far been planted to any considerable extent on the American islands. Owing to the small area available for cultivation, it is unlikely that many white planters will be attracted to settle. Laws established by the three treaty powers and since upheld by the naval governor tend further to restrict the immigration of the white man. These laws were drawn with the purpose of preventing the alienation of lands from the native owners. No foreigner is allowed to purchase real estate from the Samoans, so the only property on the market is that acquired from them previous to the institution of the law. Various schemes have been tried, however, to gain valuable land, the most successful being that of marriage into a native family. The law does provide for the lease of land, and the limit of 49 years is set. The natives themselves do little planting. Coconuts, breadfruit, and taro require no attention, and a few hours of each week spent in the taro and tobacco patches suffice both for the necessities and for luxury. So the life is on the whole one of idleness, the people being much more intent upon the organization of excursions to other villages where the whole party lives for days upon the bounty of friends than upon enriching themselves by manual work. This, of course, is principally due to the enervating climate, but largely also to the communistic method of life, the earnings of the individual going into the common fund of the family, which does not necessarily consist of blood relatives. A large family with a good name is a power, and adoptions are often made into it for purposes of strength. Despite the attractions of some foreign importations, such as cloths and canned goods, it is difficult and at times almost impossible to secure native laborers even at the rate of $1 for 8 hours. By dealing with the high chiefs, it is possible to get a gang for 6 days' engagement, changing to a new crowd from a different village for the ensuing week. Even then, the work is most indifferent, and the accomplishment for the latter half of the time sadly below that at the beginning. Some petty chiefs usually come in a gang and seem to hold it a privilege to draw pay while doing little or no work. Strikes have been had too, and though organized labor is apt to be looked upon as more or less of a civilized institution, advancing in power with the times, it is safe to say that no American trade union ever held its men more rigidly in line than do the Samoans when they decide to quit work. The trust element also exists, and meetings of chiefs fix prices upon chickens, eggs, and other commodities, enforcing adherence thereto on the people. The voyage to Samoa is made in 13 days, the trip being broken midway by an all-day stop at Honolulu, Hawaii. American line steamers leave San Francisco at intervals of 3 weeks for Sydney, Australia, stopping at Honolulu, Pago Pago, Auckland, and Sydney. Until the United States assumed control at Tutuila, the steamer line had used the harbor at Apia, but this is extremely unsafe in the hurricane season, and the company lost little time after the flag raising in changing to Pago Pago as a port of entry. This harbor has something of the shape of a shoe, is landlocked, can be entered at any time, and is perfectly safe in all weathers. It is deep, requiring no dredging, and stands today ready to furnish anchorage for a fleet. The natives are a fine-looking race of light bronze color, while their noses are flat and their lips rather thick. These features are much more comely than those of the Africans. The hair is straight, but its luster is often destroyed by bleaching with lime, secured by burning the coral rock. It is a common sight to see heads plastered white with the lime on Saturday as part preparation for the Sunday toilet. The men are large in stature, often over 6 feet, and the development of the torso is especially good due, no doubt, to the constant use of the rowboat and canoe. Every young man, before he is recognized as a warrior, must be tattooed, and though the missionaries have tried to stop the practice, it still goes on without check. However, the candidate sometimes finds it expedient to visit another island to secure the decoration, as the design is nearly continuous from waist to knee and presents much of the appearance of a pair of blue knee breeches when complete. It can be readily understood that the artist requires several days for the work. The operation in itself is quite painful, and when, as is customary, the victim has his lacerated skin bathed in salt water, no little is added to his discomfort. The young women are often quite comely, but like most of their sex in the tropics, soon lose their good looks. The Samoan takes but one wife at a time, but the process of divorce is simple, the husband having only to send his wedded partner home to her people, and though all the natives profess Christianity, the missionaries have never succeeded in entirely stopping this practice. These missionaries have long since reduced the language to writing and given the race a Bible and a dictionary with other books of educational value. The language is rather difficult to learn, and this the more so as there are 2 distinct methods of speech, it being decidedly bad form to use many of the words of the common people in addressing a high chief. Oratory is a fine art, and the position of chief talking man, which is hereditary, is second only to that of the highest chief. Eloquence is by no means uncommon, and is much in demand, as most of the affairs of the community are settled by conferences of the chiefs. The houses consist of thatched roofs of dome shape, supported on posts about 5 feet high, and it is a common sight to see the orator leaning upon a tall staff, the mark of office of the talking man, haranguing the assembled phono from a distance. Though he stand on the opposite side of the village square from the guest house in which the chiefs are assembled, woe to the man, woman, or child who dares cross between the speaker and his audience. The Samoans usually consider a marriage with the white man advantageous, and from the observations of a year's residence in the islands, it would appear that with the continued influx of Americans and Europeans, the native blood will quickly become mixed. A taste for the dress of civilization is already spreading rapidly, and in all probability, it will be but a short time until the Samoa of Stevenson, except for its picturesque hills, will be a thing of the past.